my gosh. Okay, no, I unmuted myself. My microphone just got disconnected for some reason. I don't know why. It wasn't my fault this time. But welcome in, everyone. I'm so excited. It's book club. Yay! Guys, I don't know about you guys, but I loved the book. Who read it? Who read the book? The book was Scythe by Neal, Shusterman, and I have a lot to say. I hope you guys have a lot to say too. All right, be prepared for that. Boop. That is the cover of the book. We read Scythe by Neal Shusterman. As always, I'm going to start off with a little plot summary of the book. In Scythe, the world is no longer run by humans. There's an AI interface that they call the Thunderhead that has essentially ensured perfect utopia for humans. By that, I mean there's no disease, there's no hunger, there's no poverty. Everyone is living their best life. And because of all of that, no one can die. If someone dies from an accident, they got hit by a car, they can actually revive people. People don't die from natural causes anymore. Of course, this leads to some population issues, so they have to come up with a solution. The solution to that is to have a subsection of humans, a job title, you could say, of Scythe. For Scythe, their job is to kill, or as I call it, glean citizens at random. Scythes are highly trained individuals, and they're selected, have to go through an apprenticeship and all this stuff. The humans, the Scythes, take care of gleaning rather than giving that task over to the Thunderhead. They believe it to be a moral issue, and they think that in a world of perfections, that humans shouldn't forget their origins, essentially. So it's a human's job to control the population. So it is the sole thing that the Thunderhead does not control. There's basically no government anymore. There's nothing like that. Only the Scythedom is controlled by humans, and the Thunderhead can't intervene with anything by the Scythedom. So the story itself, though, focuses on these two teens, Citra and Rowan, who are chosen to become apprentices to a renowned Scythe whose name is Faerie. And they're set to train with him for a year, competing to earn the title of Scythe. He can only promote one to become a Scythe, so they're kind of competing against each other. Which at first this is okay, right? Because the whole deal was that whoever lost got to go back to their normal life, and it was yippee-doo-dah. However, odds quickly turn when they go to a Scythe convention, essentially, and the council decides that whoever loses has to be gleaned by the winner. So now someone's going to die instead of getting to go back to their normal lives, which is super crazy because they're 16, 17, and this is a world where people live well into their hundreds. So with that, fighting from the traditional Scythes and new modern idea Scythes commence throughout the book, and there's a lot of power play, because also, by the way, Scythes are above the law in every single way. They do not answer to any law. They can do pretty much whatever they want, and they can't be killed. The only way they can die is if they decide to glean themselves, which that's the only way they can get out of things. That's what Scythe is about. Overall, though, my impressions of this book, I thought this was a really interesting utopian book. I've used to read these a lot. My thought process when I read a lot of these utopian books is that the world sounds pretty awful, and of course it wouldn't work. But with this one, it truly seemed, save for the Scythedom, it truly seemed like this world was figured out. They were set. There's something to be said about that. It talks a lot about how a lot of people just float through their lives because everything is already optimized. Everything is created. Everything that needs to be invented is invented. They tried space travel. They tried this. They tried that. They don't have anything to strive for. Humanity has reached its peak because AI intelligent. They have nothing to strive for. So I found it really impactful when Citra and Rowan were first walking through the museum and looking at art from the mortal days, and they got really hit by the fact that they couldn't relate. I think they went to a play and they also went to the museum, and they can't relate to the art form because all of the hardships that we see in media that are put in our media now in these days doesn't exist for them. The only thing they can kind of relate to, they said, is romance subjects. They can't relate to anything else. They can't relate relate to poverty, they can't relate to corrupt government. It's all laid out for them. Feeling existential dread? Have you considered drugs? They're a great solution. They bypass the drugs even. They just bypass that. But also the Thunderhead gives everyone the job they will feel satisfied in. That's true. But it's also talked about how, like, the jobs aren't even really needed. They just do it because that's what they do, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, that was my overall impression. But I do think, like, it's a pretty dang good utopia. Like, if I had to go live in a utopian, like, novel, I think I would choose this one. Because even though the Scythedom, like, exists and, like, you could be killed, it's also extremely rare. Like, people are always shocked to see a Scythe. Like, you go hundreds of years without being killed. Like, it's not anything crazy, you know? I do have to say, of the utopians I've seen, this is the one I'd like to live in. Of course, with these books, we always have to talk about the romance, and this is quite where this book fell flat for me. The two main characters are a teen boy and girl, so of course there's going to be romance. I felt absolutely no chemistry between Citra and Rowan. I like them individually. I think they both had interesting traits. I could not get behind it. I don't think in any of Citra's POVs that she mentioned Rowan in any sort of romantic sense, and the only time I can recall Rowan saying anything was when he saw her in her running clothes and was like, whoa, she's sexy. That was like it. That was like all I remember. And then at the end, they were like, oh my god, I love you. Bye. That was it. That was like the last line. I was like, oh my gosh. I felt more moved our like one-page love story between Curie and Faraday. I was like, wow, they're so beautiful together. I thought they had more going for them than Citra and Rowan. Citra and Rowan's relationship felt really out of place, and I don't know. We'll see how it develops, but it fell flat for me. And I don't think that they seemed like they hated each other, but they felt more like friends than like they wanted to be in a relationship with each other. Faraday tried to set up a competition for enemies, but they never felt like they were in the competition. Whenever they brought up that what would happen at the end, they were just like, haha, yeah, we'll deal with that later. Yeah! Actually, let's talk about that for a second. I mean, I didn't have like a gripe with it per se, but it was very like, they really put off, like every time there was a problem, they just said, we'll deal with that later. I think if they both could have been made Scythes, Faraday would have let them. Here's the thing is that he got punished. So one of the rules to be a Scythe, one of the rules is that you cannot have any like romantic relationships. You essentially become like, you know, you don't get into relationships, you don't like see your family. It's very like you're by yourself, right? Faraday, when he was very young, still like, I don't remember how old, but he was very young. It wasn't like creepy old man relationship. Curie on as his apprentice, she like fell in love with him, and he rejected her because he was like, girl, who are you? And then they came back around to it and they got into a relationship, and they were in a secret relationship for 7 years, and they were like secret lovers. It was so beautiful, right? So beautiful. Then the Scythedom found out, and so they both got assigned, was it 7 deaths for each year that they were in a relationship? So they both had to be killed 7 times, and then they also were like barred from seeing each other for 70 years. I think he would have not allowed Citra and Rowan to be in a relationship regardless, because I would imagine he wouldn't want that to happen to them. Is my analysis of the situation. Yeah, and they still loved each other 70 years later. It's so sweet. Actually, they didn't really talk about if Curie... I mean, I think Curie always holds, like, affection for Faraday, but Faraday, like, saved his note from her. Very sweet. Anyway, their love story was more impactful to me in, like, the 2 pages that we got than Citra and Rowan's romance throughout the entire book. But we'll see how it develops. I'm holding on because I do like every other aspect of the book so far. I don't know if any of you had like the physical copy, but I had like a physical book, and when I got to the end, I was pleasantly surprised because at the end, the author put in a long list of discussion questions. So I picked out some of my favorites, wrote them down, and I kind of want to discuss some of them. The first one was, why can gleaning not be referred to as killing? Why does society believe it's socially or morally incorrect to call it such? And do you agree? Actually, it's funny because it had the discussion questions, and then it also had another page that you could write whole of questions for like whole essays. I feel like it's already because killing had already had a bad reputation, so they made a new word to make it more of an honor/ceremony. Yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say. You know, in the olden days, which is basically like what our modern world is that, you know, when you kill someone, that's a crime, right? Like, that's something you do when you're committing a crime. So obviously they wouldn't want the Scythedom, like individual Scythes who are put on a pedestal and have a very high honor and are, you know, respected by society, to then have their job be called something that was previously a crime. Of course, in this world, you can't really be killed because they can revive anyone who just died, but this is just something that they do for their job. They're not committing a crime. So yeah, thank you everyone. I'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.